Have you ever felt that strange stillness in the air right before a storm? That feeling like the world is holding its breath? That's what the air in northern Arizona always feels like. Desert is always waiting for something to happen. On a bright morning in May 2010, Claire Donovan pulled her old blue Jeep onto the shoulder of a dirt trail. The sign read, Grand Canyon National Forest. She'd told her friends she just needed a weekend to clear her head, sometime alone with nature. But her last text message, sent at 5:42 p.m., that same day, painted a very different picture. It said, I think I found something buried near the trail. After that message, her phone went silent. Forever. When park rangers finally reached her location 3 days later, they found a scene that was both perfectly normal and deeply unsettling. Her campsite looked completely untouched. The tent was zipped up tight. All her food was packed away. Her coffee cup was sitting right beside the cold fire pit, still half full. The dark liquid dried to a ring at the edges. But Claire was gone. There was no sign of her anywhere, or no footprints leading away from the camp, no signs of a struggle, no tracks to follow. It was as if she had simply vanished into the thin, dry air. But one thing was missing from the scene, her camera. The only real clue the investigators found was a single boot print, belonging to Claire, heading north, deeper into the forest. And beside it, another set of tracks, smaller, lighter, heading back towards the trail, as if someone had walked with her and then walked away alone. For 5 years, that was all anyone knew. The case went cold. Another story whispered around campfires, another ghost in the vast wilderness. Then, her younger sister, Megan Donovan, returned. She drove to that same spot, parked where Claire's Jeep had been 5 years before. The trail had changed, of course. The trees were thicker, the path more overgrown with stubborn desert brush. But the silence felt exactly the same, that heavy waiting stillness. Megan carried with her a small, unassuming cardboard box. Inside was everything the police had finally released from evidence. Claire's phone, her watch, and a single cracked SD card from the missing camera, which had been anonymously mailed to the police department a year after her disappearance. That night, back in a dim, lonely motel room, Megan plugged the SD card into her laptop. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Most of the files were corrupted, just digital noise and garbled data, all except one. One single photo. It was taken just before sunset. The image was breathtaking. Claire stood on a rocky ridge, the setting sun painting the sky behind her in brilliant shades of orange and purple. She was smiling, but it was a faint, almost forced smile. And just at the edge of the frame, half hidden in the growing shadows, was a figure. A man. His face was obscured, no features visible, but he was standing just a little too close. Too close for a stranger, too close for a coincidence. Megan's breath caught in her throat. She zoomed in on the photo, the image pixelating, and blurring until it was just a mess of squares. She focused on her sister's face. Claire's hair was caught in the wind. Her expression seemed calm, but her eyes, they were looking just past it, at something or someone out of frame. Leaning closer to the screen, Megan's eyes scanned every detail. And then she saw it. A tiny reflection in the dark lens of Claire's sunglasses. It was distorted, but unmistakable. Shovel, and next to it, a dark shape against the ground. A hole. A freshly dug hole. A wave of dread washed over her. She quickly pulled up the photo's metadata, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The GPS coordinates embedded in the image file told a chilling story. This photo wasn't taken at the campsite where the rangers found her belongings. It was taken 4 miles east, deep inside a restricted area of the park. An area that had been closed to the public since 2008, known for its dangerous, abandoned mining tunnels. An area that, according to recent park reports, had seen a spike in illegal digging. Megan stared at the screen, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The quiet weekend to clear her head. The text about finding something buried, as the man in the photo. The shovel. This was no accident. Claire hadn't just gotten lost. She had stumbled onto something she wasn't supposed to see. Just then, the fluorescent lights in the cheap motel room flickered and buzzed. The old air conditioner hummed a low, monotonous tune. And in that hum, Megan could almost hear her sister's voice. A memory from a final frantic voicemail she had tried so hard to forget. A message she had ignored. Meg, if I don't call by Sunday, don't come looking for me. Promise me. But promises are made to be broken, especially for the people we love. Megan whispered into the empty, humming darkness of the room, a vow to the sister she had lost. I'm already here. The search for Claire was over. The search for answers had just begun. Thank you so much for watching. This story is a fictional account, but it reminds us how vast and mysterious our world can be. If you were captivated by this mystery, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next video. The next morning, the desert was pale, an endless sea of rust-colored dust and whispering wind. I parked my rental Jeep at the edge of a restricted trail. A rusted sign stood crookedly in the sand. Closed hazardous area. My GPS was buzzing. The coordinates from Claire's last photo pointed just beyond that barrier, exactly 4.2 miles east of where her sister's camp had been discovered. The hike took nearly 2 hours. Every few hundred feet, I stopped to catch my breath listening. I wasn't listening for voices, but for the sound of something out of place. A camera shutter, a loose rock tumbling down a slope, the distant hum of an engine. But there was nothing. Just the wind, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. Finally, the terrain changed. The loose sand gave way to a stretch of dry, cracked clay, and there, half buried in the dirt, something metallic caught the harsh sunlight. I knelt down, my knees sinking into the hard-packed earth. It was a shovel, old and rusted. Its handle was cracked, the blade worn thin from use. But it was the shovel itself that made my hands start to shake. It was the initials carved crudely into the wooden grip. C.D. Claire Donovan. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the vast silence. I scanned the horizon, half expecting to see a figure watching me from the distant mesas. But the area was completely still, utterly deserted. I brushed away more dirt and saw something else beneath the shovel. A torn piece of nylon, faded blue. It was the corner of a sleeping bag. My fingers trembled as I pulled it free. The fabric was stiff, brittle from years under the sun. Tucked inside was a weatherproof case, the kind hikers used to protect electronics. It was sealed tight, wrapped with a thick strip of duct tape. And on that tape, written in faded black marker, were 2 words that made my breath catch in my throat. For Megan. Back at the motel that night, the cheap yellow lamp cast long shadows across the room. I laid the case on the desk. My hands hesitated over the tape. The seal looked untouched, like it had been waiting here for years. I peeled it open slowly, the sound of the tape ripping apart echoing in the quiet room. Inside there were 3 things: a small, weathered notebook, a folded map, and a single photograph. I picked up the photo first. It showed Claire standing near a canyon ridge the same day as the picture I'd found online. But this was taken from a different angle. And behind her, half hidden by a jumble of rocks, was a black SUV. The license plate was blurred, but I could just make out the first 2 letters, AZ9. Something I hadn't noticed before, tucked away in the corner of the frame a man's hand, resting firmly on Claire's shoulder. The notebook was damp, the pages warped and hard to read. But one page was still clear, the ink miraculously preserved. Claire's familiar handwriting, though rushed, was unmistakable. If you find this, don't tell anyone where it was buried. You were watching the trail. I saw them that night. One of them knew my name. I closed the book, my pulse racing. They knew her. They were watching her. My mind reeled. I reached for the map, unfolding it carefully. There were 3 locations circled in red. One was marked camp, another was marked ridge, and the third, the one that made a cold dread seep into my bones, simply said, the pit. Outside, a low rumble of thunder rolled over the desert horizon, a rare storm for Arizona in May. The wind picked up, rattling the flimsy windows of the motel room. I stared at the final note written at the bottom of the map, Claire's handwriting barely visible under the fading ink. If they find this before you do, it ends here. But if you find it first, start where I stopped. I folded the map, my hands steady now with a new resolve. I'm coming, Claire, I whispered to the empty room. As a bolt of lightning struck in the distance, illuminating the endless canyon floor, a thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. The The coordinates for the pit were less than a mile from an old abandoned mining site, and that was the same place the police had flat out refused to search back in 2010. Thanks for joining me on this journey. It's just getting started. If you want to find out what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss it. The next morning, the desert was silent. It's not the peaceful kind of silence. It was a dead silence. It's no birds, no wind, just this endless, oppressive quiet that makes the hair on your arms stand up. It feels like time itself has forgotten you exist. I left before the sun even thought about rising, with my sister's hand-drawn map as my only guide. I was following the little red circles she'd drawn, each one a breadcrumb leading me deeper into this desolate landscape. The last circle, the final destination, was labeled simply, the pit. It was marked at the far end of the old Hawthorne mining site, a place the authorities had fenced off and sealed years ago after a catastrophic collapse. The locals, the few who would even talk about it, whispered that the ground was unstable, that it was a place you just didn't go. But their warnings meant nothing to me now. What I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, was that my sister Claire had gone there. She had walked this same path. As I pushed forward, the landscape began to change, twisting into something alien. The soft, familiar sand hardened into sharp gravel, and then the gravel gave way to this dark, almost black iron-colored soil that stuck to my boots like thick mud. It felt wrong, unnatural. Then I saw it. A single wooden sign, half swallowed by the dirt, its letters faded but still legible. Hawthorne Mine closed 1994, my GPS, which I'd been checking obsessively, let out a single sharp beep. The coordinates matched. I was here. It was more like a wide, sunken clearing, a scar on the land, circled by rusted, broken-down machinery and massive boulders that looked like sleeping giants. But the center of the pit, that was different. The ground was flattened, disturbed. It looked like someone had been digging. And recently, my instinct screamed at me, but I forced my feet to move closer, crouching down beside a pile of loose dirt that was clearly out of place. And that's when I saw it. Scrap of fabric, just peeking out from the sand. It was beige, a thick canvas material. My hand trembled as I pulled at it gently. It was part of a backpack strap, frayed and stiff, baked hard by years under the sun. The bag itself was half buried, but I managed to wrestle it free. Inside, there were only 3 things: heavy-duty flashlight, its battery long dead, a field notebook, its cover torn and water-damaged, and a park ranger badge. The metal was scratched and dull, but the name engraved on it was still perfectly clear. Ranger D. Harlow. I froze. The name hit me like a physical blow. I knew that name. I'd read it 100 times in the cold case files. Ranger Daniel Harlow. He was the first responding officer to Claire's missing person report back in 2010. The official story was that he de-retired shortly after the case went cold, moved away. In a bag buried in the one place Claire was last seen. If my sister had his ID, what did that mean? Did she meet him out here? Did something happen? Or did she take it from him? My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. I turned the heavy badge over in my palm, and there, scratched crudely into the back, with something sharp, were 2 words that made my blood run cold. Trust Nay-11. Suddenly a sound shattered the silence, the crunch of gravel shifting somewhere above me. I snapped my head up, my heart pounding against my ribs, and scanned the rocky ridge that overlooked the pit. For a split second, I saw a flash of light, like a reflection glinting off glass. A lens, maybe. Then it was gone. But I knew I wasn't alone. Adrenaline surged through me. I grabbed the bag, scrambling to my feet, ready to run back the way I came. But then, something else caught my eye. A row of small wooden stakes hammered into the ground near the edge of the pit. Each one was marked with a tiny strip of yellow tape, faded and cracked from the sun. There were 4 of them in a neat line. And beside the very last stake, the earth had been dug up. I knelt down, my curiosity overriding my fear. The soil here was looser, darker, and there, half exposed by the shifting sand, was a small plastic evidence tag, the kind police use. It was stamped with a date, May 2010, the month Claire disappeared. And tucked just under it, I saw what looked like a piece of broken camera lens, It was one of the key items that had vanished with her, never to be recovered. If this was a piece of it, and it was found next to an official police evidence tag, that meant they were here. The police knew about this spot. They found something. Why wasn't it in any of the reports? I pulled out my phone. My hands shaking so badly, I could barely hold it steady. I took a photo of the site, making sure not to touch a single thing. This was a crime scene. A 10-year-old crime scene that someone had tried to bury. I turned to leave, to finally get out of this terrible place when my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification. I glanced at the screen. No signal. But below it, one new message from an unknown number. My fingers felt clumsy as I tapped to open it. The text was short, 6 words that felt like a punch to the gut. "You're too late." My stomach dropped. I looked at the message timestamp. 10:18 a.m. I glanced at my phone's clock. 10:18 a.m. The message had arrived the exact second I was reading it. But that was impossible. There was no service out here. It's not a single bar. No cell tower for miles. My head whipped back up toward the ridge. The sun hit that same spot again, a definite metallic flash. Binoculars or a camera lens. Someone was watching me, and then I heard it. It was far away, but it was unmistakable. I clutched the bag to my chest, its contents suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. Whoever was still guarding this place, watching it after all these years, meant that whatever my sister found out here, it was a secret someone was willing to do anything to keep buried. The drive back to my Jeep was a blur. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. When I finally reached it, the desert seemed calm again, empty and indifferent. On the passenger seat, there was something that hadn't been there before. A single folded piece of paper, and written on it, in a familiar, looping script, was my name. Megan. It was Claire's handwriting. My hands trembled as I unfolded the note. "Hey." The message inside was just as chilling as the one on my phone. "You found the pit, don't come back here again." See, I just sat there, frozen in the driver's seat, the note shaking in my hands. Claire was alive, or like she had been here. Recently, warning me away. The wind had started to pick up, and in the distance, a low rumble of thunder rolled ominously over the canyons. The question wasn't where my sister had gone anymore, it was why. Why was she warning me now after all this time? And who was she hiding from? Thanks for following me on this journey. It's getting more intense than I ever imagined. If you want to see what happens next, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. I have a feeling things are about to get even crazier. Stay safe out there. The sun was getting low when I finally pulled into Ashford, Arizona. It's the kind of tiny desert town you see in old movies. The ones with a single gas station diner and payphone still standing on the street corner. My hands were practically fused to the steering wheel, knuckles bone white. On the passenger seat, a ranger's badge caught the fading light. Ranger D. Harlow. He was the one who filed the original report on my sister Claire's disappearance. And, conveniently, the same guy who retired right after she vanished. I had an address dug up from an old dusty personnel record. Harlow Residence, Route 89. The house was exactly what you'd expect. Small wooden, surrounded by that endless, silent, dry grass. I parked my truck, slipped the badge into my pocket, and walked up the rickety porch steps. A for sale sign leaned against the railing, bleached and cracked by years of sun. It felt like a warning. I knocked, but the door just creaked open on its own. The air inside was thick with the smell of dust, stale coffee, and old paper. Boxes were stacked everywhere, lining the walls, almost to the ceiling. Most were labeled records, reports, archives, and all of them had the same National Park logo stamped on the side. It was like a museum of forgotten cases. "Mr. Harlow?" called out, my voice sounding small in the stillness. "It's about Claire Donovan." A voice answered from deeper within the house. It was hoarse, but steady. "I thought they told you to stop looking." Then he stepped out of the shadows. He was older than I expected, maybe early 60s, with deep lines etched around his eyes like desert canyons. His old uniform jacket was draped over a chair, the sleeves worn thin. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his gaze hard. "People who dig into old stories out here, they tend to stay buried." I decided to ignore the threat and held up the badge I found. "This was in the ground at the pit," I said, keeping my voice level. Along with my sister's things, Harlow froze. The change in his eyes was instant, a flicker of something dark and old. "You went back there?" he asked, his voice dropping. "Yes," I confirmed. "And someone was watching me. He ran a hand over his forehead, looking exhausted. "You shouldn't have done that." I took a step closer, pushing my advantage. "Tell me what really happened to her, please." For a long moment, he just stood there. Then he let out this long, heavy sigh, the kind of sigh that carries 10 years of guilt with it. "Your sister wasn't the first to go missing around that site," he said, finally breaking his silence. "There were others, campers, tourists, but the department didn't want the attention. They told us to report them as accidents." The floor felt like it dropped out from under me. "How many?" I asked, dreading the answer. 5, maybe 6. He turned away, staring out the window at the empty desert. But Claire, she was different. She filed a complaint just before she vanished. "What kind of complaint?" I pressed. She said she saw men digging near the closed tunnels. Thought it was illegal mining. She even took photos as evidence. The next morning she was gone. He walked over to one of the boxes and pulled out a folder. On the front, in faded red ink, it said confiscated -2010. He opened it. Inside were a handful of black and white photos, the kind printed out in police labs. My breath caught in my throat. One showed Claire's empty campsite, another the ridge where she'd taken her last picture, and the last one, a man standing by a truck, his face half turned away from the camera, was the same black SUV, the one from the photo in Claire's notebook. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Harlow hesitated. He worked for the survey team that fenced off the mine, but his name isn't on any official roster. He handed me another sheet of paper. It was a statement, unsigned, dated 2 days after Claire went missing. She told someone a person from the department warned her to stop asking questions, Harlow said quietly. When I tried to reopen the case, my transfer papers came through the very next day. I leaned over the table, my mind racing as I flipped through the reports. One detail kept jumping out at me, repeated over and over. Subject may have entered restricted area. I frowned. So the official story was that she caused her own disappearance? Harlow just nodded. That's how they closed it. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything left unsaid. Then Harlow said something that sent a chill straight down my spine. "You said someone was watching you at the pit?" I nodded. He looked deeply uneasy. "That's not the first time someone said that. The last ranger they sent to patrol that area. He quit after a week. Claimed he saw flashlights at night. Heard voices too." My jaw tightened. "And you think it's the same people?" He didn't answer directly. He just looked me in the eye, his voice low and urgent. "Whatever she found, it's still out there. And whoever left that message for you, they want you to stop before you find it too." Before I could even process that, a sharp clatter came from outside, metal hitting gravel. We both froze. Then the unmistakable sound of a car door closing. Harlow moved quickly to the window, peering through a slit in the curtains. His face went pale. "That's the same truck," he whispered. "The black SUV." My heart hammered against my ribs. I started toward the door, but Harlow threw up a hand to stop me. "Don't. Just stay quiet." Through the gap in the curtains, I saw it. The same black SUV from the photos parked just across the road. Its engine was running, but the headlights were off. A dark figure sat motionless behind the windshield, just watching the house. After what felt like an eternity, the engine revved softly. The SUV pulled away, melting back into the desert twilight. Harlow turned to me, his voice shaking just a little. "Need to go now. Take what you found and leave town. Whatever happened to your sister, it's bigger than this county." I stared at the files scattered on the table, then back at him. My whole life had led me to this moment. "If I leave now," I said, "I'll never know what she found." He hesitated, his face a storm of conflict. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. He handed it to me. On it were coordinates, written in a neat, familiar handwriting. Claire's handwriting. "She gave me this the night before she disappeared," he said. "I never went. Maybe it's time someone did." I looked down at the faded ink. 3 numbers. And below them, a single word. Depth. I looked up at him, confused. "Depth. What does that mean?" Harlow shook his head slowly. "I don't think it's just a location. I think it's how far she went. When I walked out of that house, the evening wind had picked up, carrying the scent of distant rain. Far on the horizon, lightning flickered silently. Just like the storm that rolled through the night, Claire vanished. I folded the note, tucked it safely in my pocket, and whispered to the desert, "Then that's where I'm going next." Thank you so much for following along with my journey. Every clue brings me closer, but also deeper into danger. If you want to see what happens next, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. I have a feeling the real search is just beginning. The desert has a way of swallowing secrets, buries them under sand and time, until all that's left is a whisper on the wind. My sister Claire became one of those secrets. For 2 years, the official story was that she got lost hiking, a tragic accident in the vast, unforgiving landscape. But I never believed it. Claire was too careful, too prepared. So when an old cryptic note from her estranged friend Harlow showed up, containing a set of coordinates, I knew this was my chance. The coordinates led me 30 miles deeper into the Mojave, far from any paved road, far from civilization. My Jeep kicked up clouds of dust as I followed the blinking arrow on my GPS. It felt like driving to the edge of the world. Then, just as the last rays of sunlight bled out across the horizon, the signal died. A single blinking arrow floating in a void of blank space. I stopped the car. The silence was absolute, heavy. The air so dry it felt sharp in my lungs. I pulled out the note again, my fingers tracing the numbers. Latitude, longitude, and the third one, the one that had been nagging at me the entire drive, depth. I got out of the car and looked around. The landscape was bizarre. I was on a wide, flat plateau, but a large section nearby had sunk in, like a giant bowl carved into the earth. It looked like the ground had collapsed from something underneath, a long, long time ago. My gut twisted. This was it. I walked to the edge of the sinkhole, my boots crunching on loose rock and sand, and then I saw it. Half buried, almost invisible, was the corner of a metal structure. It's an old ventilation shaft. The grate was eaten through with rust. One corner bent upwards, just enough to create an opening. A dark promise. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I pulled out my heavy-duty flashlight and aimed the beam into the blackness. The light didn't hit a bottom. It was just swallowed by the abyss. I was about to turn back to tell myself this was crazy when something caught my eye. A flicker of silver, maybe 20 feet down, something metallic reflecting the beam. It was a sign. I had to know. Taking a deep breath that did nothing to calm my nerves, I swung my leg over the edge and found the first rung of a ladder. The climb down was terrifying. The air grew colder, damper, with each rung I descended. My footsteps echoed in the claustrophobic metal tube. Faint rhythmic dripping sounds started somewhere far below. A slow, steady beat counting down to... What? After what felt like an eternity, my boots hit solid ground. I swept my flashlight beam across the space. I wasn't in a narrow tunnel. I was in a massive chamber, bigger than a warehouse. Old mining equipment was scattered everywhere. Leaning against the rock walls like sleeping giants, rusted oxygen tanks, splintered wooden crates, a metal desk buried under a thick coat of dust and sand. But cutting through that ancient layer of grime was something that made the hair on my arms stand up. A set of modern footprints. Clear, distinct, leading deeper into the darkness. Someone had been here, and they'd been here recently. I followed the tracks, my own footsteps feeling clumsy and loud in the crushing silence. They led to the far end of the chamber, to a heavy wooden door propped open by a rock. A chill that had nothing to do with the temperature ran down my spine. The air behind the door was different, colder, and it carried a faint, sterile smell like chemicals. This room was smaller, cleaner. In the center, there was a simple metal table. Sitting on it, waiting for me, was a camera. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I knew it before I even touched it. It was Claire's. The same model, the same custom strap, the same tiny scratches on the lens ring from that trip we took to the coast. I turned it over, my fingers fumbling. The battery was gone, but the SD card was still there. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I pulled out my laptop and the card reader I always carry in my backpack. Please work, please work, please work. The laptop screen flickered to life. The card loaded. There were only 3 files. My breath hitched. The first was a video file, dated May 13th, 2010. The timestamp read 5:40 p.m., 2 minutes before Claire sent her last text message. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely click the mouse. I opened it. The video was shaky, filmed in low light. The sound of wind howled through the microphone, distorting everything. Then I heard her, Claire's voice, ragged, out of breath. If anyone finds this, they're not rangers. They're moving something here. It's not just mining its storage. Government seals. I think they are the video cutout. Just like that, she was gone. My mind was reeling. What had she stumbled upon? Who were they? I clicked on the second file. It was shorter, just a few seconds long. A single dark frame, and then a man's voice. Distant, but clear. She saw us then, a burst of static. They knew she was there. They saw her. This wasn't an accident. This was a cover-up. My sister was silenced. Cold fury I hadn't felt in 2 years started to burn in my chest. Then I saw the third file, and my blood ran cold. It had a different date. August 2008, just 2 months ago. It wasn't a video, it was a still image. Single photograph. The perspective was low to the ground, looking up, out of the very same ventilation shaft I had just climbed through. And there, in the corner of the frame, parked exactly where I had left it, was my Jeep. My breath caught in my throat. It was a picture of my car, taken from down here. Someone else had been in this chamber. Someone had been watching me arrive. They knew I was coming. They knew I was here. Right now. I slammed the laptop shut and killed the flashlight, plunging the room into absolute, suffocating darkness. Silence. My own frantic heartbeat was the only sound. And then I heard it. A noise from above. It's a metallic creak of something heavy, shifting.
The grate.
Someone was closing the shaft entrance. A second later, the sound I had been dreading echoed down the shaft, the sharp clatter of falling gravel, and the distinct final clink of the ladder being kicked away, falling into the abyss. I was trapped. Panic surged through me. I grabbed the laptop and scrambled back into the main chamber, fumbling to turn my flashlight back on. The beam danced wildly across the rock walls, searching for another way out. Anything. My light swept over piles of debris, rusted pipes, and then I caught on something. A faded emergency sign, almost completely obscured by dust. The words were barely readable. Secondary access, North Tunnel. Hope. A tiny, desperate spark of it. I sprinted toward the sign, stumbling over the uneven ground. The passage was narrow, a tight squeeze lined with old, thick cables and rusty rails. Cold air blew against my face in intermittent gusts, proof that there was an opening somewhere ahead. It was my only way out. After 10 minutes of crawling, climbing, and squeezing through the tight space, my hands hit a metal grate. It was covered in sand. I pushed with all my strength. It didn't budge. I coughed, dust filling my lungs, and shoved again, using my back and legs. Finally, with a grinding screech, a sliver of light broke through. I pushed harder, and the grate lifted. I scrambled out, pulling myself into the cool desert air, collapsing onto the sand, gasping for breath. The sun was a fiery sliver on the horizon, painting the cliffs in shades of red and orange. My Jeep was still there, a beautiful, comforting sight. But then my eyes locked on something else. Parked about 50 yards away, silent and menacing, was a black SUV. The engine was running. I froze, not daring to move, not even to breathe. The driver's side window rolled down slowly, but the reflection of the setting sun on the glass was like a mirror, hiding whoever was inside. For a long, terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, the SUV reversed, turned with an unnerving calm, and drove away, its tires leaving deep tracks in the sand. My hands were still shaking as I got into my car and started the engine. The note from Harlow was on the passenger seat. I picked it up, my eyes drawn to a line of tiny, almost invisible writing at the very bottom. Right under the word depth. I hadn't seen it before. It said, "If you reach it, don't stay." That night, back in the sterile anonymity of a cheap motel room, I transferred the video files to a secure external drive and hid it deep inside my backpack. The files were corrupted, incomplete, but the timestamps were undeniable. Claire didn't get lost. Someone was with her in those final moments, and whoever it was, they knew I had the proof. They knew where I'd been, and they knew exactly where I was now. The hunt wasn't over. It had just begun. Thank you for joining me on this part of the journey. The search for the truth about what happened to Claire is far from over. If you want to see what happens next, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support means the world to me. See you in the next one. It was well past midnight when Megan reached the small motel off Highway 89. Her headlights cut through the dust and flickered against the cracked sign, vacancy. That same word. The same one she'd seen on the Sierra Motel years earlier, tied to another story, another disappearance. It felt like a recurring nightmare. Different place, same chilling feeling in her gut. Someone didn't want to be found. She parked at the far edge of the lot, away from the handful of other cars, and killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy, almost alive. She caught her reflection in the windshield and barely recognized the person staring back. Her eyes were bloodshot, hands trembling, hair damp with sweat. It had been 2 days since she'd last slept. On the passenger seat, the external drive held her sister's footage. This was it, the proof. And maybe, just maybe, the closure she'd been desperately searching for. She checked into room 5, the only one with a working lamp, according to the tired-looking man at the front desk. The light buzzed over her head, a constant annoying hum as she connected her laptop to the motel's spotty Wi-Fi. The signal was weak, but it was there. She opened the folder labeled depth_files. Inside 3 videos. One was corrupted, a dead end. Another was only partially saved, cutting off mid-sentence. But the third one was new. The last one was dated just 2 hours ago. Her stomach twisted into a knot. She hadn't recorded anything today. The file name sent a shiver down her spine. Megan_cam_4. Her own camera. Her own name. With a shaking hand, she double-clicked. The screen went black for a few unnerving seconds, then flickered to life, and she saw herself. She was sitting right there, at that very motel desk, in the same clothes, in the same room, from the exact same angle. It wasn't live, but it looked like it. A perfect, terrifying mirror. On the screen, the other Megan leaned forward, her eyes wide as she whispered directly into the camera, "They know you re-uploading it. Don't stay here tonight." Then the video cut out. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. She whipped her head around to look at the mirror behind her, half expecting to see someone standing there, but the room was empty. Just her and the buzzing lamp. Notification pinged on her laptop. Upload error, connection lost. That was it. She slammed the laptop shut, her heart pounding in her ears. She grabbed her bag, the drive, her car keys. Time to go now. But before her hand could touch the doorknob, there was a knock. 3 short, sharp taps. She froze, every muscle in her body tensing. No voice followed, no footsteps in the gravel outside. Just silence. Then the knocks came again, louder this time. Her phone buzzed on the desk scan, unknown number. The same one that had sent her cryptic texts before. The message on the screen was short and chilling. "You have something that Dose and T belong to you." She backed away from the door, clutching the hard drive like it was a lifeline. The phone buzzed again. Another message. "Your sister tried to warn you." Raw instinct took over. She didn't think. She just ran, wrenched open the back window, scrambled out into the gravel lot, and sprinted for her car. The night air was hot and dry, and her breaths came in shallow gasps. She fumbled with the keys, started the engine, and slammed the car into drive. The headlights sliced through the darkness. As she peeled out of the lot, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The door to room 5 swung open. A figure stepped out, his face completely hidden by the shadow of the overhead light. He didn't move. He didn't chase. He just stood there and watched. Megan drove until the motel's flickering lights vanished completely behind her. The desert highway stretched out, an endless ribbon of blacktop under the moon. No signs, no towns, just the vast, silent expanse of sand on either side. An hour passed, maybe more. She finally pulled over at a deserted rest stop and took a breath. She opened her laptop again. No more motel Wi-Fi. She tethered to her phone's weak signal and navigated to an anonymous upload site. She selected the file depth_files, zip, and set the destination. Public archive/missing cases forum. The upload began. Progress, 5%, 9%, 12%. Crawled. Each percentage point felt like an eternity, her laptop battery draining with every agonizing minute. She watched the sun begin to rise, painting the desert sky in shades of gold and pink. When the progress bar finally hit 100%, a small green message appeared. Upload complete. Megan leaned back in the driver's seat, the exhaustion hitting her like a physical blow. Tears stung her eyes. But she'd done it. Claire's story, the real story, the truth was finally out there for the world to see. She turned off the laptop and looked out at the horizon. For the first time in years, she felt a profound sense of stillness. The constant noise in her head, the static, the fear, it was gone. The desert looked almost peaceful in the morning light. But as the wind shifted, her eyes caught something in the sand just a few yards away from her car. A small wooden stake, half buried, with a strip of faded yellow tape wrapped around its top. The same kind of stake she'd seen at the pit, the place where Claire had filmed her final video. Her blood ran cold. And written on the tape in black marker were two words: file received. 3 days later, the footage appeared online. It was posted anonymously under the title, "The Vanished Tourist Claire Donovan's Final Evidence." It spread like wildfire. Thousands of people watched, commented, and speculated about what really happened. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. The video was removed, citing legal reasons. When users tried to re-upload it, the file corrupted every single time. No one knew who took it down or why. No one ever heard from Megan Donovan again. Weeks turned into months. The story faded into internet lore. Then a new thread appeared on that same missing cases forum. It was from a user with no profile photo, no post history, just a single, chilling post. It read, "Stop digging. The desert keeps what it's given." Attached to the post was one image, a still frame from Claire's original video, showing the ridge at sunset. But this time, in the corner of the photo, something was different. Two silhouettes stood side by side against the fading light. Claire and Megan. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more mysteries. Stay safe out there.